Hey, Natalie.
Hey, Turner. You look excited.
I just got Miss Healy's edits back. You know, for the short story I wrote last week for my writer's workshop?
Oh, what'd you write about?
Grunge's Big Adventure. It's a children's story.
I bet she liked it. What did she say?
Turner, your final story structure has improved so much. I'm impressed by how you described the key characters. Give it one more read through and see my note on the last page.
Nice. Why don't you read it to me and I'll tell you what I think.
All right, here it goes.
Hold that thought. Will Turner's success in the writer's workshop lead him to become an author? Will Grunge the Goat pique Natalie's interest in writing a story of her own? Join the knowledge seekers as they set off on an adventurous journey through story structure in this episode of Thinking Aloud.
Grunge's Big Adventure. Grunge loved adventure. At home in the city dump, Grunge leaped from smelly pile to pile. He scaled the highest stack of tires. He even raced with bulldozers. One day, while munching on a shoestring, Grunge discovered a soggy travel brochure.
Scale the heights of Jagged Top Mountain. Experience the majesty of a massive peak. Trek to one spectacular view after another. Wow! That's the adventure for me.
That night, Grunge dreamed of climbing Jagged Top Mountain. In his dreams, he was at the peak, his goatee blowing in the mountain breeze. The next morning, Grunge stuffed his backpack with old newspapers, carrot tops, and candy wrappers for meals. Grunge set off for the base of Jagged Top Mountain. Once there, Grunge gazed at the monstrous mountain towering above him. He noticed 4 trails snaking their way up the mountain.
Trail A looks like a winner,
He said, starting off. As he climbed, the air grew colder. Strong winds and heavy snow whipped around Grunge. In the snowy distance, Grunge saw something furry and brown lumbering toward him. Was it a bear? Quickly, Grunge flopped over and played dead. Suddenly, he felt something panting hot root beer breath on his face. He opened one eye.
You're not a bear.
I'm Walter, the Saint Bernard. Where are you going?
I'm hiking to the peak.
Well, you are on the wrong trail. Trail A leads to the ski slope.
The ski slope?
Sorry, friend. Say, would you like some help going back to the base? We've got a blizzard kicking up.
Grunge nodded. Then, after a slurp of root beer from Walter's barrel, they slipped and slid down Trail A. At the base, Grunge thanked Walter and said goodbye. He ate his supper of 4 newspapers and settled in for the night. The next morning, Grunge woke up still determined to make it to the peak.
Trail B will not fail me.
Grunge hiked for many hours on the zigzagging Trail B before coming to a raging river.
I did get a gold star in goat paddling, but maybe there's another way to cross.
Grunge followed the river downstream until he reached a washed-out bridge.
Looks like I'll be jumping in.
But just as he was about to stick his hooves in the frigid water, a young screech owl caught his attention.
Oh, hello, you must be the wise old owl.
Oh, no. Didn't you hear? He flew off with the spring chicken. I'm Ollie, his nephew.
I'm Grunge, and I'm hiking to the peak.
Not on Trail B. Even if you could swim across, an avalanche wiped out the rest of the trail.
Grunge plopped down in the grass.
Not again. What about Trail C?
It's worth a try. I'm headed that way myself.
As Grunge hiked down to the base, he told Ollie all about his old life back at the city dump.
Oh, it was smelly, dirty, and wonderful.
Said Grunge, munching his supper of carrot tops and the bag they came in.
But nothing is wonderful as a mountain peak.
Ollie and Grunge bid farewell, and Grunge went to sleep. When morning came, Grunge did 10 goat push-ups and stretched all 4 legs. He shook out his stubby tail.
Trail C, here I come.
Throughout the long day, Grunge continued on. He picked his way up the trail. The trail led to the entrance of a dark cave.
Hello,
Whispered Grunge, worrying about bears.
is anybody home?
Suddenly, a giant blur of whirring black wings flew from the cave and surrounded Grunge. Grunge trembled as hundreds of beady bat eyes stared at him. One of the bats spoke up.
We didn't mean to scare you. Well, actually we did. We love scaring tourists. By the way, I'm Eddie.
I'm Grunge, and I'm not a tourist. I'm a hiker trying to reach the peak.
That is a problem. Trail C ends at this cave.
What? I still must find a way to the top. I must not give up.
You'll have to try another trail.
Grunge's new bat buddies kept Grunge company on the way back to the base. Once there, they squeaked,
You can do it, Grunge!
Then they flew off into the night sky.
They're right. Tomorrow could be the day.
He chomped his dinner of candy wrappers and stretched out to sleep. In the early morning, Grunge awoke to the clapping of heavy hooves all around him. A herd of mighty mountain goats, along with their newest mountain goat kids, gathered at Trail D.
Ready for your first hike to the peak?
Asked the largest mountain goat. Cheered the kids. Excitedly, Grunge took the last place in the mountain goat line. He helped the kids scramble up the trail, wade streams, and shimmy over boulders. The trail grew steeper, and the air turned clear and cold. Finally, the herd scaled their way to the very peak of Jagged Top Mountain. Grunge took a deep breath.
We did it!
He exclaimed. He gazed at the spectacular view. It was just like the photos on the travel brochure, only better. But down in the valley below, Grunge spotted something familiar. It was his beloved stinky dump, the dump he affectionately called home. Grunge's goatee blew in the mountain breeze as he thought for a while.
The peak and the dump, they're both a grand adventure.
Grunge hugged and high-hooved the herd goodbye and made the long, happy hike down the mountain. When Grunge returned home, he told everyone about the mountain peak and everything in between. One day, after lunching on envelopes and cantaloupes, Grunge spied another travel brochure and began to read.
Fly like a bird. Have the hang gliding experience of a lifetime. Oh, yeah.
And it was then that Grunge began dreaming.
That's so good. So, what's the note from Miss Healy say?
Turner, I suggest you contact several publishers to see if they're interested in publishing your short story. Can you believe it? Me? Published?
I've never known a real author before.
Well, you do now.
While Grunge made it to the peak of Jagged Top Mountain, Turner's journey into the world of publishing and story structure is just beginning. Be sure to watch Grunge, The Making of an Adventure, to follow Turner's progress and to see how story structure helps all authors down the right path. When we last saw our knowledge seekers in Grunger's big adventure, Turner had just received promising feedback from his teacher on his first short story. She even suggested getting the work published. Ms. Healy knows good story structure when she reads it.
There's the next great author.
Hey,
I may write a story about you for the school newspaper.
that'd be cool, but I'm not great. Yet.
Oh, you seemed pretty excited when you texted me.
Oh yeah, I think I told you I've been sending copies of my story to all kinds of publishers. Can you believe I've already heard back from 3 of them? They all liked Grunge and had helpful suggestions, but it wasn't quite the type of story they publish. And this 4th envelope just came in the mail.
Who's this from? Kid Writer's World. I have a good feeling about this one.
Hold that thought. Will Turner's persistence lead to Grunge being published? Has Natalie been inspired to write a tale of her own? Join the knowledge seekers as they follow the path to strong story structure in this episode of Thinking Aloud.
Ms. Healy said that your story structure had improved. What is that?
It's one of the topics that we've been learning about. Once you know the structure of a story, it's easy to write your own. And as an added benefit, knowing story structure also helps you to remember the key points of any story you read. Here, let's use this piece of paper to create a story map. First, fold the paper into 3 equal parts. There, you've got the basic structure of a story. Each section of the paper represents a part of the story. Every story has a beginning, middle, and an ending.
Okay.
But there's more. Since we're making a story map, X marks the spot where the story begins. We mark another X where the story will end. Notice I'm marking my ending X higher than my beginning X, because every reader should gain something from the experience.
But how do we get from here to there?
That's the creative part. When I think about starting a story, I need to introduce the reader to the characters. The characters are the people or animals who are in the story. In my story, I decided to have
Grunge!
You're right. I also learned that authors put the characters into a particular time and place called the setting.
I remember this. The setting for your story is one day at the dump.
Uh-huh. But I also learned that for a story to move forward, the character must have a goal. A goal is something the character wants or works toward. I decided that Grunge wanted to climb Jagged Top Mountain, but he needed a reason. Did you like the soggy travel brochure idea?
Clever.
So once you determine a goal for your character, you have to give him a problem. That's when something goes wrong. All stories have to have a problem for the character to solve. Grunge's problem was trying to find a trail to the top of Jagged Top Mountain.
I can see why he was confused.
I have to think of more than one way for the character to solve his problem.
So that's the reason for the 4 trails.
I couldn't have Grunge find the right trail right away. That would have solved the problem too quickly. Good authors learn the craft of storytelling from the traditions of the old storytellers. You know the story of the 3 bears or the 3 little pigs?
Yeah, so what does that have to do with Grunge?
Before there were books with the stories written down, the storyteller needed to be able to remember them. You know, if you try to remember much more than 3 things, it's easy to get it mixed up. In a story, the character gets 3 tries to solve the problem. Of course, each one doesn't work. Remember the porridge, the chair, and the bed?
And the straw, sticks, and bricks?
Exactly.
So this works for short stories. What about novels, movies?
It gets a little more complicated, but the basic story structure is the framework. A story is a story.
I had no idea.
I decided to have Grunge encounter trails with dead ends. To make it more interesting, I thought of...
Wait, don't tell me. There's Walter, Ollie, and Eddie.
You've got it. Each time Grunge couldn't make it up the mountain, he still has his problem to solve. I indicate each try on the map. Trail A ended at the ski slope, Trail B was wiped out in an avalanche, and Trail C took him to Eddie's bat cave. Because these 3 events are obstacles to the character achieving the goal, I show him returning to the level of the problem. In each case, Walter, Ollie, and Eddie show Grunge the way back down the mountain. So I label each event. In my writer's workshop, we learned the series of these events is called the plot. I also learned that skillful authors save their best idea for last. You see, the author finally writes a solution that does work. The solution is when the problem gets solved. It's important that the character meets his goal. The bears come home and Goldilocks runs away.
Oh, and the wolf comes down the chimney into the pot. I never realized that stories have patterns. So that's why you had Grunge go back up the mountain on Trail D with a herd of mighty mountain goats. Let's see if I've got it. Grunge, your character, lives in a dump. The setting. He wants to get to the top of Jagged Top Mountain, the goal, but he can't find the right trail, the problem. So, after 3 tries, Trail A, B, and C, he joins the mountain goats. He gets to the top of Jagged Top Mountain by way of Trail D, which is the solution. This story structure stuff really works. It did help me remember the parts of your story.
Hey, pretty good. But I also learned in the writer's workshop that you shouldn't stop writing a story at the point of the solution. The ending is more than the end. It's the last third of the story. I learned that skillful authors use the ending of the story to wrap it up. I knew I couldn't leave Grunge at the top of the mountain. I decided to have him long for his stinky dump, say goodbye to his new friends, and tell everyone back home about his adventure.
You know, I'm thinking about the structure of the story I'm going to write about you. It begins with you writing your story. Your goal is to get published, but your problem is finding the right publisher. You've heard back from 3 different publishers who all said no. And the 4th?
Could be the solution. Kid Writers World would be pleased to publish Grunge's big adventure.
Hey, you did it!
The knowledge seekers have found that there is no mystery in good story structure. You too will be well on your way to writing a great masterpiece if you think about the characters, setting, goal, problem, events, and solution. Map your way to great stories and be sure to watch the next episode of Thinking Aloud.